Hey, I'm Labron Allen, the founder of the Natural Health Clinic, and today we're going to be talking about viruses. They can destroy you, they can kill you. But the fact of the matter is, no one actually knows exactly what they are and how they came to be. We're going to talk all about that right after this, so stay tuned. So this is a cell, all right? Who knew that cells were so large and blue? But what is inside of a cell is part of a living organism. So my point is cells are living. They are a living organism. So for example, you probably can't see it on screen, but this is mitochondria. Think of that as the engines within the cell, so they produce energy so that the cell can do their various processes. These are kind of the organelles, which they are part of the factory within the cells. They supply stuff or let's say product to the factory. Over in here, we have these little dots. Again, you may not be able to see them on screen, but you have little teeny tiny dots, and those are ribosomes. You may be somewhat familiar with that if you remember back into the COVID-19 era. Ribosomes have to do with making proteins, one of which is mRNA, messenger RNA protein. And then, of course, you see right here in the center, that is called the nucleus of the cell. So all of these different parts of the cell make it into a living organism. And our body has anywhere estimated between 50 and 75 trillion cells that make up all of our tissue, organs, etc. Now, why did I show you a blue cell? And it's foam. Who knew that cells were foam? But why did I show that to you? Well, it's because, looks like I need to turn down my volume here for a second. Hold on. Okay. It's because viruses, we oftentimes see something like this, except as, maybe things that come out of it. And we say, this is a virus, whatever virus it might be, flu, etc. All right? Well, the thing is that viruses are actually not living. That's right. So viruses don't have any of the stuff in here. Viruses have absolutely none of it. Okay? They are not cells of any kind. And the fact of the matter is, what I've already said previously, is that viruses can obviously kill you, but they can also help you. What, you may say? We'll get into that in just a moment. Now, what happens is that these cells, they invade the body, maybe through the sinus cavities, maybe through the mucosal orifice, otherwise known as your mouth. And so they get into the body, and what they do is they start coming into contact with cell receptors. So think of it of a virus coming in here to the cell, and if it basically fits like a lock and key into the cell receptor, the cell is going to accept it into all of these parts. Well, what happens when that happens is that the virus starts making use of this living organism to replicate or to reproduce, if you will. So what happens is that they make use of all these resources that I showed you, and then eventually they will explode, literally explode the cell, and so then that allows all that information to begin invading all the other surrounding cells, hence the term virulent. So there are two main types or categories of viruses. The ones that I just described that invade the cells and explode them and so forth, that is a more common type of viruses that we come into contact with, I would say. It's like cold, flu, COVID-19, whatever the case may be. Those are called lytic viruses. Now, there are another type of viruses, and those are called latent or stealth viruses. Now, it doesn't mean that they're part of the CIA or the FBI. No, agencies may use those things, but they're not necessarily part of it. What it means is that the latent types of viruses, invade our DNA through the cells, And then they basically go silent. You don't know that you have it any longer until age, bad diet, high stress, environmental factors, pollutants, chemicals, whatever the case may be, all kinds of things that can disrupt the immune system. But once that disruption has occurred to a certain point, then you will start becoming symptomatic of these viruses. Well, what type of viruses are those? You've heard of them. Probably the most common one is, for example, HIV. So the HIV virus is considered a latent or stealth virus. Herpes simplex, you ever get oftentimes called cold sores, that is the herpes simplex virus. And then EBV, which is otherwise known as Epstein-Barr virus, that is also known as a latent virus. Now, many people in the population have these viruses. In fact, in the case of, for example, Epstein-Barr virus, it's estimated about 98% of the global population has the Epstein-Barr virus, but they are not symptomatic necessarily. The problem is that sometimes people become symptomatic of the Epstein-Barr virus, and all types of symptoms can occur. Now the question comes, and again I alluded to this earlier, where do viruses come from? Why are they here? What's the point of them? We know that, for example, the point of bacteria is basically digestion. Bacteria digest dead bodies, helps digest our food. There is a point to bacteria, all right? So what is the point of viruses? As far as where they come from, there are a few theories, which means no one really knows. So I'll go through the more common theories, and then I'll tell you what I think might be the case, because my opinion is just as valid as anyone else's. All right? So there is what's called a virus first hypothesis. And to sum it up, basically the idea is that viruses were around before any of our cells were around. So virus first. Then there is the reduction theory, which means that viruses are actually a remnant of some type of cells, and that is why they rely upon other cells in order to multiply. So they're basically cellular remnants, if you will, is the idea there. And then there is another one that's called the giant virus and the fourth domain. I'll let you research into that yourself. Basically, though, briefly again, it's actually quite complex, this hypothesis. It has to do with what's called horizontal gene transfer. See why I wanted you to research it yourself? So it has to do with what's called horizontal gene transfer. And what that means is that part of our cells, of every human, perhaps even animal living, has certain viruses that are transmitted ancestrally. So that means that we transmit, or our portions of our genes are actually viruses, if you will, and that transmission gives information, knowledge, or data on down the generational line. Okay? So that's kind of the horizontal gene theory. In fact, about 8% of our genetic material is viral in nature, which is pretty interesting. So you only thought you were mainly made up of bacteria, right? We all know that the gut is 80% bacteria. Well, actually, even our DNA is an infection, if you will. It's 8% viral material. So it's possible, and the reason that I'm saying this is what I've seen clinically, and also taking that information with other experts have said, it's possible that viruses may actually be a necessary tool of survival. So what do I mean by that? Well, your immune system, there's an innate immune system, and then there's a part of the immune system that learns. It's like a learning machine. And viruses enable our immune system to learn more and learn how to be more efficient at destroying viruses and other types of infection. So it's quite possible that without viruses, we actually would not get as much immune function and as powerful of immune function as we have today. Now, going back to EBV specifically, one of the problems with viruses is that they can create issues throughout the body through affecting how the cells utilize nutrients. Okay, so for example, EBV, that actually damages your vitamin D receptors. So it's quite possible that individuals who are having symptoms of EBV, if they radically increase their vitamin D intake, when I say radically, I'm talking about 30, 40, 50, maybe 60,000 international units of vitamin D a day, will find a significant, at least could find a significant improvement in their symptoms. It's worth a try. Doesn't work, stop taking it, right? So it's interesting that all of, or many of these different viruses affect how the cells utilize nutrients, EBV being one of the examples. So going back to what types of viruses, we talked about the two types, right? So we have the lytic viruses, of which that's the type we're most commonly familiar with as far as colds, flus, etc. And then we have the latent type, of which the EBV is one example. So the question is, and I also alluded to this earlier, what causes reactivation of these latent viruses? So again, one of the factors is aging, and that you can be perfectly fine, and then as you get to a certain age, your immune system capability just wanes, and boom, now those latent viruses or viruses that were once latent reactivate, and you start having serious symptoms. Stress, high levels of cortisol can most certainly activate these latent viruses. In fact, in clinic, that is what I often see, is that after individuals have been under a significant period of stress for a period of time, then they start having these autoimmune types of issues and situations. It's very, very common. Certain kinds of UV light can also activate these latent viruses. So that's very interesting, because we need UV light in order to manufacture vitamin D, as an example, but certain parts of the UV spectrum can actually, or have at least been found, to activate these latent viruses as well. Now, as far as our immune system basically has two types of cells that can kill viruses. So we have cytotoxic T cells and we have killer T cells. So the question is, what can we do to strengthen those two types of cells? Well, I would say as far as vitamin specifically, what type of nutrient we could take or what type of vitamin we could take to strengthen the immune system, hands down, vitamin D is by far the most important vitamin. It's actually a hormone, by the way, just as an aside, but we'll just call it vitamin D, because if I called it hormone D, no one would know what I was talking about. But it's actually a hormone, and that is, as I said, probably the most important nutrient, actually. It acts as something that's called a modulator, an immune modulator. So what that means is that you have hyperactive immune function, which would actually be the case in autoimmune situations, as an example. The body's own immune system is destroying itself. So that would modulate it down to normal function. If it's weak function, maybe a person's just been really stressed, extremely tired, then vitamin D can actually bring that up to normal physiological function. So that's what a modulator is, and vitamin D is by far, as far as nutrients are concerned, the best immune modulator there is. Now, you remember in the COVID-19 era, and they talked about zinc. Well, zinc stops viral replication, all right? So that's pretty important, right? If the virus can't replicate and use all those parts of the cell that I showed you, then it's not going to become virulent, and that's obviously going to help you considerably in the case of viral infection. Vitamin C helps to keep the adrenals strong during infection, and that's actually why within the tissue of the body, the highest concentration of vitamin C is in the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands and adrenal function is incredibly important, I would say even pivotal, in immune health and immune function. Sleep. If you get run down, you know that it's very easy to get a lytic infection or a cold flu, and that's because it compromises the immune system. You just cannot get around it. Sleep is incredibly important for keeping immune strength. Also, this is something that I want to really make a point of and get your attention. When you get an infection and you get a fever, don't stop the fever. The fever is a natural immune response. What it's doing and why it's doing it is that it is cooking that virus. All right, it's trying to burn it literally out of the body. And fevers are not a health concern. I mean, unless it gets super high, and you say, well, what's super high? I'd say unless it gets 105, it's not going to cause any type of problem. And even over that, the problems that it causes are not serious, threatening, life-threatening situations, despite what you hear. So the problem is that as soon as a person gets 101, 102 fever, oh my God, we take Tylenol or whatever it is, and suppress that fever. Well, what you're doing, remember I talked about earlier, the immune system learns. Well, in that case, your immune system is also learning, and what it's learning is, oh, I don't need to function very hard. I don't need to work hard. I can function less. So every time a fever is suppressed, the immune function is a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less. All right? So let your immune system do its job. That's why the body is producing a fever. It's not going haywire. It knows exactly what it's doing, and you don't. All right? So just get out of the way of your body and let it do what it needs to do. And don't be afraid of what it's doing. That is part of the immune system's learning process. Now, garlic has been found, and you may already know this, is actually pretty commonly known. It's been found to be very helpful in viral infection, and that is actually backed up by scientific literature. So garlic is something to take if you're having a type of infection. Fasting is also extremely helpful when you are sick. In fact, how often or how frequently has it been that you have been ill with a virus and you just have no appetite at all? You see, your body is telling you what to do. Listen to your body, because fasting actually strengthens immune function and immune response. Okay? And then finally, specifically to help killer T cells, laughter. Laughter helps killer T cells. Isn't it interesting? Our body wants us to be happy and enjoy life, and that actually helps to improve immune function. Now, as the ending statement, or maybe the second to third ending statement, this is important. Viruses outside of your body cannot do anything. They are dead. So you don't need to be, some kind of homophobe. I don't think that's right. Germaphobe. Don't be a homophobe either. and go around sanitizing your hands and wearing masks or whatever the case may be, because that actually, there's no point to it. Viruses outside the body don't cause any issue whatsoever. They aren't alive, so you can't kill a virus, okay? Think about that fact, all right? All through the COVID era, hand sanitizing everywhere, gallons of hand sanitizer everywhere. And why? Viruses are dead. They are not living organisms. That's why they have to have cells in order to reproduce. Bacteria, those are living organisms, as an example. Parasites, those are living organisms, okay? But viruses are not living. So you can't kill something that's not living. They're not zombie viruses. Well, maybe there are, but they are dead. So you can't kill it. So hand sanitizer really doesn't do anything for viruses, okay? They are powerless outside of the body. So just keep that in mind. So I hope you found this information helpful, informative, and if you did, then I would really appreciate it if you would like, share, comment on this video. That helps the algorithms and gets it to be broadcast to a larger audience. Still not huge, because there is a lot of suppression, even though Zuckerberg now is saying, oh, sorry, didn't mean to interfere with different things. Well, he still is, right? Still interfering, but that's just the way it is. But your likes, comments, shares helps a lot. And if you are needing help with, who knows, stealth viruses, latent viruses, or whatever the health issue may be, then I invite you to schedule an initial consultation. At an initial consultation, we're going to do a discovery to see if we can actually help you through a total health restoration program with your health goals. And if you can, I guarantee you're going to do extremely well. If we can't, I'll let you know that as well. So if you are looking for help, then please schedule an initial consultation and we can see what we may be able to do to help you. Once again, my name is Labron Allen, the founder of the Natural Health Clinic. Thanks for watching and appreciate those shares, likes, and comments.